It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I am your host this morning. And we're going to cover a number of areas that are waiting with bated breath to be exposed. You know, every day we see new actions on the part of those who are alleged leaders in which they are acting more like our masters. And every day we see new fruit and new leaves growing upon the tree of treason. And I use that word with intent because where we are right now, the nation, our legislators, our president, our courts are operating in open and unabashed treason. And it's time that America acknowledged and recognized it for what it is. Putting aside all of the semantics and all of the other issues, it is apparent that we need to clearly recognize how far we have strayed from the path of constitutional rule. And I think that unless we begin to recognize it, openly discuss it, and look for a solution that falls outside the mantra of we'll just then elect people to replace those people in office. You know, putting old tyrants aside to put new tyrants in place is barely the solution, folks. We're going to kind of cover 4 stories today in our 4 segments. And each of these is kind of hinged on the idea of where we are and this idea of a tree that bears the fruit of treason. In our first segment, we're going to talk about China, which is buying U.S. assets with U.S. money. They're on a shopping spree, and I don't think America recognizes how much money they're spending here domestically in the United States. And what they're essentially doing is buying hard assets to avoid the inevitable plunge in the U.S. dollar. The intellectually honest and the critically thinking among us have to ask this following question. Who is it that our government represents? Is it we the people, or is it China? And I say that because our Congress is spending money that we borrow from the Chinese, who actually are working actively to unseat the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. And they want to replace it with their own Chinese yuan, their dollar. Then our Congress allows a $600 billion a year trade deficit in China's benefit. $600 billion a year, ladies and gentlemen, for one country. The Chinese then take their earnings, quote unquote, and they buy American assets, including real estate and any other hard businesses themselves, you know, the production mechanisms, and any other hard asset they can get their hands on in preparation for the inevitable collapse of the U.S. dollar. I think we need to look at that, and we're going to. Our second segment is milk at $8 a gallon. That is the claim that we're hearing by the press. They're throwing the fear of God into America. There's a new report out by CBS That's the communist broadcasting system. And I asked the question on Facebook and on our website, is this a threat or is it a report? Because in their effort to pass this farm bill, which is 80% food stamps, which, by the way, has absolutely zero to do with farming, the Congress is feeding the Ministry of Propaganda this story in an attempt to frighten America into approving a $955 billion, that's almost $1 trillion, folks, dollar bill, dollar-denominated act or legislative bill, in which less than 1% of that is attributable to milk over a 10-year period. Wow. So, are they trying to throw the fear of God into us by saying if you don't vote for this bill, milk is going to jump to $8 a gallon? And so the short attention span, low information American will say, oh my goodness, we got to solve that problem right away. We can't have that. Well, how about some logic here? How about we strip the milk portion out of the farm bill? How about we strip the food stamp portion out of the farm bill? How about we break the bill into its individual component pieces, and then we vote individually on those bills, like our Constitution was intended for us to do and mandated that we do. Making Congress vote some 20 or 30 different times on one bill is not an unrealistic expectation. I mean, we spend hundreds of millions of dollars every year for these people to do just that. Bills that are labeled omnibus and comprehensive always end in one thing. They always mean that we, the people, get the shaft. We get a hosing in cost and in liberty. They package in all kinds of pork. They bury all kinds of liberty-reducing amendments and acts within those bills that never see the light of day and nobody talks about. We're going to address this issue because the truth is, this is more of the poisonous fruit of the tree of treason. This kind of propagandic news article, which is not news at all, it's basically a lightly veiled threat. Our third topic is going to be church-based or religious-based alternatives to Obamacare. Why am I incorporating that into the tree of treason? Well, these church-based organizations, and all three of them happen to be Christian organizations, so, you know, I don't care whether you're a Jew or a Catholic or whether you're a Muslim or whether you're a Baptist or whether you're an atheist. Basically, these are alternatives that allow you to avoid Obamacare. And the reason I say that is because Obamacare is one of the major branches of, if you will, of the tree of treason. And that takes us to our fourth topic, which is Obamacare. It is the fruit, the actual pluckable, pickable fruit of the tree of treason. It's now reached its stage of maturity. It's no longer a bud. It's grown into a fruit. All right, we're gonna tackle our first topic, which is China buying U.S. assets. There's an article out there on Market Watch. It's from the Wall Street Journal. It's a sub-segment of the Wall Street Journal, and basically their headline is "What will China buy? Beijing goes shopping in the U.S." China is forecast to spend roughly $1 trillion over the next decade buying up foreign assets, including about $15 to $20 billion a year on U.S. investments. Well, they go on to list exactly what these Chinese firms are buying, and there are 5 categories. 1, energy. China relies on imported energy, and it seeks assets here. They recently purchased Kiplinger cites their state-owned Sinochem, which is a $1.7 billion purchase of a Texas shale company. So Sinochem, which is a company owned by China it's a corporation owned by the government, purchased for $1.7 billion a Texas shale oil company. Financial services. Chinese interests are looking to make purchases that offer U.S. financial expertise. Quote, as the Asian giant prepares for the more open financial markets that will come with a consumer economy, meaning a consumer economy in China, not here. In other words, they've already raped and pillaged us for all that we're worth almost, and now they're trying to prepare for their own consumer economy over there. 3, food production. Here the impetus is on securing various food companies and food producers and manufacturers that make supplies that aren't tainted by China's food supply system is loaded with all kinds of food safety problems. You remember the problem with the baby formula that was coming over here and things like that. The Shanghua Group recently closed a $4.8 billion deal for Smithfield Foods here in the United States. Now, Smithfield, for the record, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the largest food manufacturer producers in the United States. And so they will take Smithfield and they will not only continue to feed the United States with it, but also import it into China or export it into China. I don't know how you want to classify that. And incorporate the principles and the ideals behind Smithfield into their own system. The fourth segment is real estate, and they are purchasing up vast quantities of commercial and industrial properties, including these megalithic office buildings and things like that. They just bought Chase Manhattan Plaza, and they also bought the General Motors building in New York. I mean, we're talking about, iconic landmarks in the United States. Manufacturing is the fifth segment. This involves China seeking to, quote, to hang on to work that is in some cases moving back to the United States. And he's speaking specifically there about an investment in a U.S. auto parts manufacturing company. I think the point of what I'm trying to express here is that what China is doing is purchasing U.S. assets with U.S. dollars. In other words, what they're actually purchasing comes with our money. We currently owe China $1.3 trillion. Now that is out of the $17 trillion that is our national debt. We currently owe China holds $1.3 trillion of that. Japan, by the way, most people don't even recognize Japan as in the game, but they own $1.1 trillion. They are the second largest foreign holder of U.S. debt. What you have to recognize is that what China is doing is they are pulling vast sums of resources from the United States in actual dollars and production and jobs and product. Okay? This is happening on a day in and day out basis. Where a perfect example is General Motors under their agreement with the federal government when we bailed General Motors out, which, by the way, we just finalized the loss on that. It's $9.7 billion, $10 billion we lost. But one of the criteria of that agreement where we bailed out GM was that they would have to meet certain production quotas that ramped up over the course of a couple of years. They never one time hit the quota. And the Treasury the other day, it was about 2 weeks ago actually, relieved them of that obligation because they said, "Oh, well, we can't hit those production quotas." And so the Treasury relieved them of that obligation under the bailout settlement. You know what General Motors did? They rushed right over to China. They've built a manufacturing plant over there. utilizing U.S. profits, U.S. monies, U.S. technology, U.S. patents. And they've ramped their production up 70% in China. If you own a GM vehicle, GMC, or any of the GM products, you're assisting, ultimately, in the demise of the United States of America. Our Congress is borrowing money from China. They're spending it in profligate ways that anyone and everyone can admit is completely uncontrollable. China simultaneously is the leader of the BRICS countries. Now, BRICS is an acronym. It's BRICS, and it stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and recently added to that is Australia. These countries are trying to, and Brazil, Russia, and India are three biggies, right? I'm sorry, Russia, India, and China, excuse me. Although Brazil's no slouch either, and we just ticked them off because we got caught spying on their president's private phone and email. But when we look at the issue of these nations trying to unseat the United States dollar as the world's reserve currency and replace it with the yuan, and you'll note that, by the way, that none of these countries, Brazil, India, China, Russia, China, or South Africa, use the euro as their currency. They don't. Russia has the ruble. China has the yuan. And each of these countries are seeking to unseat the United States dollar as the world's reserve currency. And they want to replace it with the Chinese currency of the yuan. So we're funding our own fiscal enemy. We're funding our own reserve currency enemy. And then on top of that, our government allows a $600 billion a year trade deficit. $600 billion a year. Ladies and gentlemen, that is almost the equivalent of our entire deficit. It's about $750 billion a year. And there's at least another $150 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse that could be found within 8 minutes by any competent accountant. So when we have a borrowing that is equal to the sum of our deficit, and the vast majority of that deficit is going to China with the blessing and the approval of our Congress, you got to wonder, who do these people represent and who do they work for? They're buying hard assets, real estate, industry, businesses, hard goods, things that have value irrespective of economic collapse, because the real estate will be there even if the financial situation in the U.S. dollar implodes. Even if our currency were to collapse, the buildings are still there to be populated by Chinese businesses. They're buying businesses because even if the dollar collapses, people still have to eat. They still have to go to school. They still have there will be some functionality in the economic engine. I mean, it may be running on one cylinder, but there will still be some, and they want to be the owners of those businesses. They're buying virtually any hard asset they can receive and get their hands on. They're buying the energy supplies, and they're buying the companies, not only the supplies of energy, i.e. the shale formations, but the companies that extract the oil or the natural gas or whatever. They have their own energy problem over there. And they're basically putting in place Chinese embassies in the resource-rich United States to draw that energy off. In the event that the United States dollar were to collapse, you can bet your bottom dollar that won't be going to American cars and American homes. It will be pulled from the ground and sent to China, where they desperately need it. They're buying financial services because no matter what, even if there was a banking collapse in America, they can then export the architects and the people who have created the capitalistic system, if you will, in the United States and import them over there. And in addition to that, there will still always be some commerce moving. The government, even in the event of a financial economic collapse, has plans for continuation. And so they expect some restoration of some sort, of some order, of some financial system. I don't know what that will look like, and probably nobody does except some policy wonks in Washington. So when they're buying energy and they're buying financial systems and services, when they're buying the means and the method and the production of food, when they're buying the real estate, which has hard asset value irrespective of short of a nuclear weapon, and when they're buying the manufacturing capabilities, the skills, and the patents that go along with those, while simultaneously working to subvert the U.S. dollar, which will cause the economic collapse, you begin to see a plan here. All of this is being gathered so that it can be exported out of the country to the new world economic leader, China. And our Congress is complicit, and they assist in this daily. There are congressmen who actually have come out and publicly stated that China should be the model upon which the United States bases itself. It's almost a treasonous statement. The real question for those of us who are interested beyond the curious surface questions are, who is our government actually representing? Have they been bought off, bribed away, coerced, or corrupted away? I mean, the truth of the matter is, it's a question that needs answering. Those people who are intellectually honest, those people who are critical thinkers, can draw conclusions from this. And these aren't far-reaching conclusions. You know, in a time of controversy where there are multiple positions that can be taken, the simplest solution, the simplest possible outcome or reasoning is almost invariably the truth. And I think that's what we're seeing here. Our own government is betraying us to a totalitarianistic, authoritarian country while simultaneously subverting our own industry and our businesses and our capital and our everything else about our nation, not to mention our freedom and our liberty and our Constitution. Congress is acting in open and unabashed treason. And I think it's time that America recognize where we're at. I've had people say to me, you use the word treason quite frequently. And my general response is, well, you don't use it enough. If you look at how our founders looked at it, they would tell you right off the bat. I mean, if any of them could be alive right now, they would tell you, after taking a couple of days to review what's going on here, they would turn around and say to you that we are not operating in tyranny, that we have already fallen to a totalitarian society. Thomas Jefferson was the one who said, I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. You know, don't we see where we are? All that tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. So why are you silent? Why will you not use that word? Why will you not use tyranny and treason in your every conversation? You should be. You should be, because it's here. And, you know, the analogy of you laying in bed and knowing that there's an intruder in your home and that they've entered your bedroom, and you're sitting there in fear, cowering under the covers and pulling the cover up over your head while the intruder ransacks your house, and the next room they come into is yours. And instead of reacting, you pull the covers up a little more and quiver and cower in fear. The very truth of the matter is, the definition of tyranny is when all power is gathered under one place. We long, long ago passed that threshold. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the Farm Bill follies. Milk at $8 a gallon. Panic in the streets. What a joke. Propaganda interleaved into national media stories in an attempt to use Cass Sunstein's nudge principle. The Hegelian dialectic. Get the people upset. Creative crisis. Get the people upset until they scream for relief, and then give them that relief along with a knife right in the heart. Find us at americasvoicenow.org. We'll be right back.